Hey, in today's episode, let's talk about what it takes to plan and execute a webinar, or sometimes you call it a masterclass, to sell your online course. What are some of the things you need to be thinking about? What decisions do you need to make? Let's talk about it today. Here we go.
Welcome to the Course Creators HQ podcast, helping you navigate the latest techniques for creating and marketing online courses. And now, here's your host, Julie Hood.
So my intention for you today is to leave this episode with your mind blown on all the things you could do to create a webinar to sell your masterclass. We probably won't talk about how you fill it, maybe just a little bit, but primarily we're going to talk about all the decisions you have to make and the setup and things that you have to do. And this is actually from a free gift that I have called the webinar checklist. So I'm going to put that in the show notes so you can download it and actually fill it out and put in your own notes. But for now, you can listen to this episode and just start thinking about what answers you would have. And before I jump in, I want to make sure, have you signed up for the 200th podcast episode drawing? We didn't have that many people signed up yet, and it is a huge prize. Plus, just for signing up, you get 2 free courses from me plus a social media planner. So it's, get the free gifts. You never know, you might win. It's over $4,000 worth of prizes if you end up winning. And you can also get more entries. So there's a whole big list of all these things you can do to get more entries, inviting people. You can go to Facebook groups you're in, and if there's a promo day, you could share your specific link to the drawing. And every time somebody gets signed up, you get 3 more entries into the drawing. So hopefully you'll jump in on that. It's at coursecreatorshq.com/200drawing. Come sign up. I'd love to get to work with you for free. You might be the winner. So hope you can join us for that. Okay, so back to our concept for today, which is pulling together a webinar specifically to sell your online course. And the first thing I want to mention is you probably don't want to call it a webinar. Webinars have been around so long now, people have started to kind of give them a negative tone. So I like to call them master classes because then it feels more like they're getting a course training concept as opposed to a webinar. So that's the first thing. Second thing is you need to figure out what your topic is going to be. And part of the challenge with that is you want it to be educational enough that it's an early step before people are taking your course. So you're helping them get situated, get ready to jump in with you. So make your webinar a step in that direction. So you're getting them up to speed, you're getting them ready to go. You've thought about what they need to know to get started with you. As opposed to something directly from your course, we want to get them ready and be like, oh, this was great. Now, what do I do next? And the next needs to be signing up for your course. So, also related to that is you might have some other ideas or other purposes for your webinar. So let me talk about what I mean here. So yes, sell my course could be one of the reasons you're doing your webinars, but you might just want to increase your credibility. So your authority, where you're building that know, like, and trust factor with your audience. And less of the sales side of things. Maybe that's what you're doing. Or maybe you're trying to increase market awareness and kind of let people know who you are and what you talk about, but not a specific sales pitch. So these are all the fun decisions you get to make before you host your webinar / masterclass. And for the rest of this episode, I'm just going to call it a webinar, and you can use masterclass in your marketing. Okay, next question for you. Will your webinar be free or will it be paid? And there's some advantages and disadvantages to both of them. So free, obviously, you would think you'll get more folks signed up for it if they don't have to pay for it. However, there is the challenge with getting them to show up. And I know I've done this too, where I sign up for something that's free and I don't always show up. So that's one of the advantages for doing a paid webinar, is that people are more likely to show up because they have paid for it. And I did a few of these at the beginning of the year, and I was really happy with the results. It doesn't have to be a lot, $10, $20, $27, that kind of level, but at least something about putting your credit card down gets people to show up. Now, you may not get as many attendees, so it really depends on what your purpose is and what you're trying to accomplish, whether you do free or paid. And then obviously you want to pick the date and the time and the day of the week, and give yourself plenty of time to promote this. So I know I've done some where it's like next week and I throw them up and I don't get as many attendees. If you give yourself 3-4 weeks or more to talk about it, especially if it's going to be a big deal, you can get more people on the list, and you'll have more time to pull all the promotional materials together. You can also think about how many people you want to attend, and from there that can kind of feed some of your marketing, depending on how many people you want to get into the space. Then think about how long do you want it to last. So 30 minutes, an hour, 90 minutes starts getting a little long, especially now. I'm getting to where I really like the shorter sessions. So it feels less of a commitment, I think. But if you're prepared and you're ready, you can cover a lot of content in just 30 minutes. And then you want to think about what webinar hosting service you're going to use. So depending on some of these features will help you decide which tool you're going to use. So for example, how many people do you need to attend? How many are you planning to have? Does it need to record for you? Does it need to have playback, and how many playback options for you? Or are you going to download it and upload it somewhere else, like Google Drive or something? Will you be using screen recordings, or do you just need to have audio? Do you want the attendees to be able to chat during the webinar? Do you need to be able to share your screen? And then the other piece of that was being able to record what you're sharing. And then do you want your attendees to raise their hands and ask questions, or do you want more of a Q&A sort of thing? So depending on which tool you use, you get some of these features, and some of them you may not get as depending on what you're using. So obviously Zoom, I think, is the most common one that people are using, and it's what we're most used to. It's easy for most people to jump in, and they understand the concept of a Zoom link. There are some other tools that you can use out there. I listed a couple: easyteleseminarsoftware.com. You can use YouTube, the live stream to, YouTube, or even Facebook has live streaming now. LinkedIn has live streaming now. So depending on where your audience is, you might want to use one of those live stream tools. The challenge with live streaming is trying to interact with your students, where Zoom, you could actually bring them up and have them speak if you want to have some kind of live Q&A. So just more decisions to make, which is part of the reason why I wanted to have this episode. Is you want to think about these decisions before you choose how it's all going to come together. So a couple things to help you with promotion. This is not the end all be all, but it's a couple things you can think about. press releases, website posts, so like a blog post, social media posts. If you have affiliates, you can ask them to help promote your webinar and give them an affiliate link. And there's a lot of other things. Those are just a couple that you can think about. And, if you're going to do social media posts, then you need to come up with images and figure out when you're going to post and what you're going to post and how often you're going to post, all those things. Then you want to think about equipment. So if you've never done a webinar before, there's some equipment that can be helpful and can really make your masterclass take it to another level. So I really like to have a microphone. So either a separate microphone like I use for my podcast, or sometimes you can do a lavalier microphone. The challenge with those is you only want to be the only one speaking. If you're doing, otherwise you need to have headphones, because if your computer is playing back someone else speaking and you've got a separate microphone, that's when you get the bad feedback. So if you're going to have more than just you speaking, make sure you have a microphone that has headphones. Probably high-speed internet. Make sure your internet is behaving. Figuring out what tool, webinar, live, that kind of thing. Are you going to do a presentation with slides or images? And if so, give yourself time to create those. If you're doing a live stream, you really want to have a really good lighting source so that your face is lit up. So I like to use the ring lights, that they aren't too expensive. I think they give you a nice bright coverage, but you can even take the lampshade off a lamp and set it in front of you and make sure that your face is lit up. Then you want to think about the topic. So how are people going to benefit? What do you want them to learn from the topic that you've chosen? And then depending on how you're going to share the content, if you're going to just do audio, you may not need this, but you'll probably really want to have a webcam or a webcam built into your computer, and make sure that you have it propped up. So there's nothing worse than having a webcam on a computer that's kind of shooting up at someone's face. It's so unflattering and I find it distracting. Like, you want it to be at eye level or even slightly above eye level so that it's shooting down for you. That's some of the most flattering video connections you can do. And then this is another little tip. It's not on the checklist, but it should be. And that is, pay attention to what's behind you. There's nothing worse than having like a whole bookshelf that's a whole disaster, or having a whole bunch of papers and stuff behind you. It's really distracting for your listeners. So have something nice behind you, simple, does not have to be complicated. I know some people really get into their background and do this whole huge background. I just want it to be simple and not distracting. And then you might need some kind of screen capture software depending on what tool you're using. Most of the software now, like Zoom, it will capture for you, but if you needed something separate. Then you want to think about the outline of your content. So this is where you really want to sit down and think about, okay, what is the goal of this webinar? What am I trying to accomplish? We talked about that at the beginning. So start there and then work backwards and think about, what do I need to teach, in what order, and how can I put this in an order that makes sense for my listeners, that they learn something. And I'm able, if you're trying to sell, then you want to have the section where you're telling them about your offer. And try to keep your energy consistent as you're going from the teaching piece into the selling piece. I think that's one of the challenges sometimes, because people will switch over to sales mode and you can feel it. And you don't want that to happen. You want it to be a consistent, oh, she's just continuing, and he's just telling me about a way we can continue to work together. So think about your outline, plan out your outline for what you're going to teach. And then the last thing on the checklist that I think is also super helpful, especially if this is early for you. Once you've gotten to where you've done a lot of these, it's not as necessary, but make sure you practice at least a couple times going through your content and test out the tool that you're using, especially if it's new. So I was using a new streaming tool earlier in 2024, and I did not have all the buttons figured out. One time I didn't have sound. One time I wasn't showing up. It wasn't super intuitive, so I'm going to sort of blame it on that. But I hadn't played with it enough to be really super savvy at where the buttons are and where things are. Because you don't want to be distracted when you're trying to talk. You don't want to be distracted with figuring out where's that button? How do I switch over from just sharing my face to sharing the PowerPoint? You know, you want all that to be easy and obvious, and so that you're not worried about that in the process. If it's something that's challenging for you, you might even think about having someone who could help you out and kind of be your producer / they're the ones playing with the buttons and switching things up for you so you can just focus on your content. So that's another thing that I've seen folks do. And then last, this episode has gotten a little longer, but I want to make sure I shared this with you. Getting people to show up. Here's one little ninja tip. There's a tool called addevent.com. And what you do is you set up the event and then you give it to people and they can literally put the event on their calendar. And I've noticed a much better show up rate when I use that versus when I don't. So I need people to get it on their calendar. I put in there, set a reminder, put this on your calendar to make sure that you show up. And then you will also do your reminder emails as the date comes closer. So the day before, the day of, and then maybe a few minutes before you start. I think that's a good kind of combination of reminders to send to people so that they show up for the event. So I hope you enjoyed this little masterclass on how to do a webinar, and make sure you download the checklist. I'll put the link in the show notes so that you can fill in the blanks and you have the checklist from everything that we talked about today. Plus, don't forget, sign up for that drawing. It's up for just a couple more weeks, so don't wait, because you get points every single day that you go back to the link and you click on the button. You get 3 more points and entries every day. So sign up for the webinar checklist, sign up for the drawing, and thanks for being here. Have an incredible week. I hope everything is going well for you and that you're having a good summer. I will talk to you on the next episode. Take care.